I'm Tiffany Meier. A president's solemn duty. That's coming up right now. The commander in chief honoring our war dead as their remains are returned home.
Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large.
New York's mayor appealing to the federal government to arrest the Israeli prime minister on international war crimes charges. As Chris Nolan's The Odyssey rolls the box office, Elon Musk saying his AI could make a better version. And the vice president has a chicken coop at home. We'll meet the man who made it. Welcome to Tiffany Meier Tonight. President Trump at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware today as the remains of 4 U.S. service members killed supporting the war in Iran returned home in one of the nation's most solemn ceremonies. The president with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and other officials standing at attention as the 4 flag-draped transfer cases carried off the aircraft. Family members watching from a short distance as their loved ones' remains placed in one of 2 vans. Before arriving at Dover, the president calling this dignified transfer ceremony one of his most difficult responsibilities as commander-in-chief.
One of the hardest things to do. For me, it's one of the hardest things to do as a president, but has to be done. All I'm going to say is we love you, we love your child, and that's what they are to them. They're their children. There's no games, no nothing. That's their child. And all you can do is throw out your heart. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The service members, identified as First Lieutenant Tyler James Fian and Private Isabella Gonzalez, who were killed in a missile and drone attack on an airbase in Jordan. Sergeant Angel S. Rampersad, believed to have died after the same attack, and Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, killed Sunday in a separate incident in Erbil, Iraq, during a controlled detonation of an attack drone. As tensions soar in the region, the president today issuing a warning on Truth Social about the Strait of Hormuz. From this point forward, anytime the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it be by missile, rocket, drone, or any other device or weapon, the United States will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant, including those located next to or in the capital city of Tehran. This now from CENTCOM, quote, U.S. forces began launching more strikes against Iranian military targets at the commander-in-chief's direction. The mission will continue to further degrade Iran's ability to threaten civilian mariners and commercial vessels transiting regional waters. From a quiet ceremony at Dover to continuing escalation, where do things go from here? Joining me now with more, Andrew Harding, policy analyst for national security at the Heritage Foundation. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you here. Now, the United States has thus far primarily hit military targets, and what President Trump is threatening would be a significant escalation. How are you reading this?
Well, good evening, Tiffany. How I'm reading this is that the president is making very clear that Iran's attacks on the Strait of Hormuz are going to only escalate in the cost that it's going to feel. We've heard for weeks and even months that the president has talked about power plant and bridge day, but we know that it's not what he wants to do. That's not his preference. He doesn't want to go this far, but Iran's own actions are leaving him with no choice. The fact that the 2 countries and Iran agreed to an MOU in order to have the ceasefire to let diplomacy play out, they've routinely violated this on a near daily basis by firing missiles into the Strait of Hormuz. So the president is rightly reinforcing American strength, demonstrating the leverage he has, and ultimately, by putting this Truth Social post out, he is therefore linking his threats specifically to Iranian actions. So now it's up to Iran if it wants to accept those costs. If it fires a missile, the president has made clear what targets are now at stake. So the ball is in Iran's court to comply with the MOU, or it's going to feel the pain.
And what effect do you think striking power plants and bridges will have? Do you think this could actually deter Iran?
Well, I certainly think it'll increase the chance that Iran will come back to the table. But as we're learning with this regime, they may be willing to take those costs. They may be willing to hurt their own people, allow their economy to continue to be in free fall here. But what the president is trying to do is find every leverage point possible to bring Iran to the table. His position throughout this entire conflict, and even before, has preferred diplomacy. The president has wanted to see a deal come together that could work in both parties' interests in order to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and ultimately keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. So the fact that Iran continues to violate this, the terms that it itself agreed to, it's signed with President Trump, it's going to ensure that the president's going to look at every option available, just demonstrate to Iran that it's not going to keep imposing costs on the global economy. It's not going to keep firing missiles at the United States and hurting American families, killing American soldiers, and also putting our allies at risk. The president is going to make sure that Iran feels the pain here for it to change its actions.
And Iran appears to be looking for ways to escalate beyond the Strait of Hormuz. Secretary Rubio said that the Iranian regime sent IRGC elements into Yemen, and the Saudis responded to that, which led to the Houthis' threats in the Red Sea. Do you see this as something that could expand the conflict?
I think the conflict has been expanding over the past few months. We certainly can look at what's happened with Hezbollah up north in Lebanon and Israel, and we're seeing the progress that's been made there to prevent Hezbollah from becoming a threat. We also know that there's been Iranian aligned militia in Iraq that have threatened the United States as well. And yes, the Houthis as well that have been able to get more involved, say, with Saudi Arabia, threaten different transit points along the Red Sea there. But ultimately, I think what it's going to be clear is A, what ultimately matters is U.S. and Iranian negotiations or U.S. Iranian military strikes. Iran is going to look for ways to where it can apply pressure, but ultimately, no, there's no possible way that any of these terrorist cells that Iran is backing can conventionally defeat the United States. So, what they're going to look at here is put pressure, have these different guerrilla tactics, fire a missile or two, and ultimately put pain on the global economy that ultimately puts the U.S. in a more difficult position. The president understands this. He's doing everything possible to deter Iran from taking these moves and to deter terrorist proxies from engaging. As if they try to, well, the United States has clearly demonstrated its conventional ability and supremacy in order to eliminate any threat that it needs to.
And speaking of Saudi Arabia, Andrew, the U.S. reached an agreement to allow sharing American nuclear power technology with Saudi Arabia, pending, of course, congressional approval. Now, the deal would include opportunities for American companies to win Saudi contracts and Saudi Arabia signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Critics say this opens a path for Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium and may be a destabilizing factor for the region. What's your take on all of this?
I think overall, this is a great step of progress for the U.S. Saudi relationship. And a few things come to mind. First, as Secretary Wright made clear during the signing, is that this is going to be an excellent opportunity for American industry, technological innovation, and nuclear energy, clean energy development, but also have the necessary safeguards to prevent that exact point that has been raised, that critical point about if this opens the door for Saudi Arabia to enrich further to a potential weapon grade uranium here. I think the United States would only have entered this agreement if it felt confident that it's going to prevent Saudi Arabia from doing that, but also has assurances that the government will do so. I think the second element here then is, well, if it's not the United States, then who? I think the Saudi Arabians have made clear that they're open to working with China and Russia on this exact point. So really, it was a race against time. I think it's important here that the United States, given the options and Saudi Arabia's interest in this field, let's make sure America wins. And by doing so, we benefit with the technology, American companies, jobs, multi-year billion-dollar growth, as well as us having the ability to monitor most closely any type of concerns that may be raised in this agreement. So this is a good step.
Now, another concern being raised is that besides U.S. companies, we could see Chinese and Russian nuclear companies bid to develop the Saudi nuclear plants. Now, we've seen them do so before, and this could allow them direct access to U.S. technologies. Do the risks outweigh the benefits here?
I think so far the benefits are going to outweigh because, again, first, the fact that the United States was able to get this agreement over the line, it puts it first in line. This ensures that American companies have preferred access, immediate access to any bids, any contracts that can benefit the United States over a multi-year period with a multi-billion dollars at stake. That is important. It's demonstrating political and long-term commitment to the United States and from the government side. It means that private sector companies and industries know that the U.S. government wants to see American companies win. And the United States entered in this agreement with the understanding that it can work very closely with Saudi Arabia. That's a major ally in the Middle East that has demonstrated its capability to fight alongside the United States, but also expanding in economic industries as well. And so while Russian and Chinese companies may try to bid here, this is why, again, time is of the essence for this agreement to have been reached. It allows the United States, assuming it wins, and it sounds like we're on the fast track to do that with these benefits, we can gain from this agreement and then mitigate the risk that prevents any of our adversaries from trying to penetrate into this important space.
Well, Andrew Harding, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani saying while the city can't arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, he still wants an international warrant enforced. That's next. Welcome back. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani defending his call for the federal government to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes, saying New York City can't do it itself. The mayor saying his team reviewed the law and concluded the city does not have the authority to execute the International Criminal Court warrant, but that the federal government can and should. The flashpoint here, the ICC warrant issued in 2024, accusing Netanyahu of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza.
I believe that the warrant that the International Criminal Court has placed upon Benjamin Netanyahu is one that should be honored. And I've also been clear about the fact that I would follow and respect our local laws. And so I asked my team to do a review of all applicable law, and it's clear that the city does not have the authority to execute this warrant. However, what is also clear is that the federal government does have the authority to execute this warrant. And I call on the federal government to join the International Criminal Court and to execute both this warrant as well as any warrant that the International Criminal Court holds.
President Trump on Monday saying the whole idea a non-starter and Netanyahu, quote, will not be arrested in the United States. The U.S. generally recognizes immunity for heads of state and United Nations representatives. Washington is also not a member of the ICC because it is not a party to the Rome Statute. For now, Mamdani saying the legal threshold is clear. New York cannot execute the warrant, but the welcome mat has been pulled back. Joining me now with more, Katie Frost, Republican strategist and former executive director of the Georgia Freedom Caucus. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to see you. First of all, what do you make of this? A city mayor calling for the arrest of the head of a state of a U.S. ally.
Well, it's wonderful to be with you again, Tiffany. This is a very unprecedented step for someone like Mayor Mamdani to take. And it's just a reminder of what is happening in the Democratic Party as we're seeing this radical faction of the DSA infiltrate their party. They are continuing to run campaigns on making promises that they cannot keep. They are trying to appeal to the most radical fringe elements within the Democratic Party, making all of these wild claims. And then what happens? They get elected and they aren't able to keep those promises. It's a reminder to the Republican Party that we have to go after the same young voters that are being attracted to DSA leaders like Mamdani with a real alternative and something we'll actually deliver on. Otherwise, they're going to continue to fall for these lies.
Now, Mayor Mamdani has discussed the ICC's arrest warrant on Netanyahu multiple times, but the most recent remarks were made just shortly after the U.S. State Department called for the dismantling of the ICC. Is he just putting on a show for a specific voter base because of campaign promises, to your earlier point?
That's exactly what's being. I've said this before. When I look at someone like Mayor Mamdani, it reminds me of the kid who ran for class president, promising that there would be pizza in the cafeteria every single day and they would have ice cream every day and recess would be twice as long. He made promises he fundamentally cannot keep. So he will try and reference these things. He'll try and say, well, it's actually not me, and he'll buck. But a lot of young people who had moved to New York City into voting for him by making promises like this, by having his slogan of free buses. And what has happened? The cost of a bus ride in New York City is actually higher now than it was when Mamdani was elected. So he's trying to appeal to his voter base. He's trying to appease them, but the realities of governing are starting to set in.
And Katie, Mamdani was actually asked today why he believes there is legal basis for arresting Netanyahu when the U.S. is not part of the ICC, while objecting to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, who was arrested on a U.S. warrant. Do you think what Mamdani is doing is showing he has a strong anti-Israel bias?
I think it's been abundantly clear that he does have an anti-Israel bias. Look at what he's spoken about in his campaigns, how he's conducted himself, who he chose to affiliate himself, different things he has refused to denounce throughout his entire history in politics. There's been a significant anti-Israel bias from Mayor Mamdani. But I would say another thing that this reveals to me is this is someone who puts the opinions of an international court over those of an American court. This is someone who is going to care more about some vague international standard rather than the realities, the laws, and the courts of the country he's supposed to be representing. And that to me is deeply concerning when we have officials in the United States who believe that international courts and international precedent matter more than what's happening in their own country.
And this all comes amid worries that the Democratic Party at large is making an anti-Israel turn. The New York metropolitan area actually has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and in specific districts, Jewish Americans can make up anywhere from 15 to 25% of the Democratic primary electorate. How likely will Democrats lose voters in November because of this?
Well, it's interesting that you would mention that, Tiffany. I actually spoke to a congressional candidate today who's running down in Florida. He's running in a district that has 25% of the population is Jewish. And he told me that they're seeing people who have voted for Democrats year after year are willing to now pull a Republican ballot. They're going to be voting for a Republican candidate this time, and the first time in a long time in the midterm, because they're seeing this very radical anti-Israel shift in the Democratic Party, thing that has been brewing for a long time, but leaders like Chuck Schumer keep it at bay. But now we're seeing this rise in the democratic socialist movement within the Democratic Party, and things that 5 years ago would get canceled are now the leading talking points on campaign websites, Democratic Party. It's absolutely disturbing what is happening, but this is going to cost them Jewish votes in states like Florida, New Jersey, New York. I look to see a significant shift within those demographics, just as President Trump appealed to Latino voters and young African American men and unprecedented in 2024. Look to see the Jewish vote also swing towards the Republican Party.
And Katie, shifting gears a bit here in Arizona, Trump-backed nominees swept the primaries last night. Now, the president posted that after decades, Arizona is becoming a Republican state. Do you think Trump-endorsed Andy Biggs can unseat Katie Hobbs?
There absolutely is potential there. And Congressman Biggs had a wonderful record as a member of Congress representing Arizona and is a strong conservative. And Katie Hobbs is someone who is completely divorced from reality. And I would just like to say, as someone named Katie, she does not represent all Katies internationally. We don't accept her as one of our own. When you look at what happened in Arizona, what's really interesting to me in this race is that Mark Kelly is someone in this state that is being really touted by the Democratic Party as being a potential 2028 contender. They think he's someone who has broad appeal, but he can't even deliver nominations within his own state of Arizona. There are candidates that he backed who failed to win. And if you can't carry your own state in a primary within your own party, why would anyone think you could win a national election? Whereas by contrast, President Trump has won multiple national elections, and his amendment still is good as gold.
And zooming out to national politics, House Republicans passed a funding bill last night, far ahead of the September 30th deadline, in hopes of putting Democrats on the defense when it comes to the budget. Is there any chance this House bill can get through the Senate?
Well, that's the big question of the hour, and there's going to be a lot of negotiations going on between the House and the Senate. It was refreshing to see the House get something done before it was this 11th hour mad dash, and so I commend Speaker Johnson for getting that done. He has the absolute worst job in Washington. There's no question about it, and I don't think anyone else would want that job. But it's time for the Senate to actually get something done and get funding passed. And it's a good reminder of the difference in the dynamic when you have to go home and be on the ballot every single election like members of Congress do versus senators. They have 6-year terms. There are a lot of them that will not be up for another 4 years. They do not feel the pressure the way other members do that they have to deliver quickly for their constituents. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to play out. I think we'll see some variation of this passed, but the bill as passed out of the House, highly unlikely to get through the Senate.
Well, Katie Frost, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And coming up, the pressure on Christians in China and elsewhere growing, as is the human rights outcry. That's next. Welcome back. Shifting focus to human rights now. The Chinese Communist Party clamping down again, this time on Christians who worship outside the state's control. In a recent operation in June, China Aid reporting armed police storming the Early Rain Covenant Church, an influential church that does not operate with state registration, detaining dozens of members. The Telegraph reporting more than 10,000 Christians have been arrested across China since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012. This part of a broader campaign against Christianity and part of the larger human rights narrative about how Beijing polices belief, association, and dissent. Joining us now with more, David Curry, former CEO of Open Doors USA and an international religious freedom advocate. David, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to see you. Now, delving straight into the intensified clampdown on Christians in China, why are we seeing this escalation now?
Well, since President Xi seized total control in 2019, he has sought to push out anybody whose voice could rise above him. That means entrepreneurs, but it especially means anybody who has a movement, faith movements might be particularly called out in this case, that could challenge the Communist Party. And with the registration of communists within China being less than 100 million people, you have 125 million people who would be self-identified as Christians. They began to see this as a growing challenge to their control. So they began cracking down on unregistered churches, underground churches as they're called, trying to force them into the open, force the names into the open, then they can monitor them. So it's been a growing problem really for some time now, and it's only intensifying.
And David, one of the highest profile cases involving China's Christian community, Pastor Ezra Jing, the founder of Zion Church, the largest house church in China, has been released from a Chinese prison recently and reunited with his family here in the United States on the eve of America's 250th birthday, actually. Senator Ted Cruz met with him and discussed that case with NTD's Steve Lance on Capitol Report. Let's take a listen to that.
The Chinese Communist Party hates God, hates religion, and hates Christianity in particular. And the Chinese Communist Party arrested Pastor Jin, arrested numerous other pastors with the Zion Church and numerous other members of the church, and wrongfully imprisoned them, persecuted them. Pastor Jin ended up spending 266 days in a Chinese jail, crowded in a cell with 30 other prisoners. He lost over 30 pounds during his time there. His health deteriorated. I urged President Trump when he met with Xi to demand Pastor Jin's release. There is a power to shining the light on persecution and shining the light on dissidents. And I told Pastor Jin, you have inspired Christians across America and across the world. And the tyranny that is the Chinese government fears you. And that's what gives Pastor Jin and the others. There are still Christians, there are still pastors imprisoned in China, and I'm going to keep pressing them to release them because religious persecution is wrong.
And David, what do you make of Senator Cruz's comments that tyrannies like the Chinese Communist Party fear people like Pastor Jin?
Well, that is true. Senator Cruz, I've talked to him several times on issues around religious freedom in Nigeria and China and elsewhere. He's been a great advocate. It should not be a partisan issue. There are Democrats and Republicans on both sides who believe in religious freedom. He's been particularly strong on this issue. He's right. What he is identifying, however, is that the Chinese Communist Party does not want any voice standing up to challenge it. And this pastor, I'm very grateful he's free. There are thousands of others who are still in prison for their faith. When you have a church of any size that could be considered a movement, the Chinese Communist Party is going to target you. They're going to imprison the pastors for a minimum of 10 years. They're going to try to break groups of 5,000 into 500 and then into groups of 50. They just keep trying to break it into ever smaller groups and make it ever more difficult to practice your faith. And that's the strategy of the Communist Party. They use zoning, they use any kind of law that they can to challenge Christian faith. But it's not just Christians. It's Falun Gong, it's Muslims in the Uyghur districts of China, It's a terrible disservice that they do to their people.
And given all of that, what else can the United States and other countries do to help stop the persecution of Christians in China?
Well, I think what we need to understand in the United States is that the people closest to the problem know the least about it in China. They control the means of communication. So, what the American public can do is draw attention to this through social media. The American political establishment can continue to draw larger attention to this because the people in China can't speak about it freely. And so they know the least about what's happening on these case by case basis, but they're the most punished by it all. They're under the most pressure. So we have to understand the nature of persecution has changed over the decades. And now the people closest and the most intimately affected by this persecution are least able to speak out about it. So we have to use our voice to speak loudly.
And to your earlier point, another country where the persecution of Christians remains a serious concern, Nigeria. President Trump has repeatedly raised the issue, urging the Nigerian government to do more to protect Christians and even threatening to cut off U.S. aid if it failed to act. Has the situation improved since then?
No, it hasn't, but it's not due to lack of effort from President Trump. He has done more than anyone in this administration to really draw out the fact that the Nigerian government is playing a political dance. They have factions within their government that want to overlook the fact or kind of obfuscate from the fact that Christians are being targeted by both religious extremists and tribal groups within the northern parts of the country. But since 2014, millions of people have been forced out of their homes down to the south, where there's a majority Christian population, in countries or cities like Lagos, where there's protection in the sheer numbers. But the sheer numbers show that more people are killed in Nigeria that we can count. There may be places like North Korea where we're not exactly sure, but more people have been killed in Nigeria for their faith in Christ since 2014 than anywhere else. So it's a very severe problem.
And David, you've been an advocate for persecuted Christians around the world for many years. What's the one message you hope people remember? And even for those who don't share the Christian faith, what can they do to help?
Well, when you talk about religious freedom, people kind of can't put their mind around what that means. But essentially, it's, do you have the freedom to believe the things that you believe between your two ears in your mind? What you choose to read, what you choose to believe? That's a fundamental, the most fundamental human right. So if we don't have the right to believe what we want, what we truly believe is a fundamental fact of faith, then are we free at all? And that's why this is so important for everybody to speak out about religious freedom, so that people have the right to read a religious text, whether it be the Bible or anything else, and then choose to believe it or choose not to believe it. It's the right to have a faith or have no faith at all, and it is the most fundamental first human right.
Well, David Curry, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And we'll have a lot more news after this, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Game time once again. So we've got a lean panel tonight, so I'll be one-on-one. I've chosen a show favorite, big deal or no big deal. I'll queue up some of the stories we've been talking about in the newsroom. The panel will have to duke it out. Is the story a big deal or a whole lot of nada? So joining us now, our most excellent panel, Dave Martin, NTD senior sports reporter and election data analyst, and Chris Bob, NTD's political correspondent. Thank you both so much for being here. First, Elon Musk says his AI company, xAI, will create a full-length film of the Odyssey entirely using its AI model Grok Imagine. Musk reposted an X-user's AI-generated version of the Odyssey yesterday and wrote, before this year ends, Grok Imagine will make a full-length movie of the Odyssey that is historically accurate and true to the art of Homer. Here's the clip that inspired Musk's remarks.
I must go.
The sea will take you from me.
I will return. I left my one love. An oath called me. Troy. Troy fell. We killed everything. The sea took my ships, my men. 9 days adrift. Now, here I am. Stranded.
All right, this comes, of course, as Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is generating major buzz and dominating theaters. Chris, let's start with you. An Odyssey movie made entirely with AI. Big deal? No big deal?
Big deal. Big deal. Not just because it's probably going to take up the electricity of 3 counties in Texas, but because it's going to be historically accurate. That's what Elon Musk promised us. We're going to have it by Christmas time. Historical accuracy, a lot of people have had a gripe about that part of the ex-post. They've said, oh, how could it be historically accurate? It's a fictional story. That's not what I was worried about. Because, you know, the period of time, we know how things would look, right? And that's kind of one of the issues that people made about this movie, right? I'm not one of them. I enjoy things when they are entertaining. The part that bothered me was true to the art of Homer, because I'm really historically accurate. And I don't even think Homer existed. That's how rare. No, I don't. I think it was probably like an oral story that got codified. This guy Homer, it meant something back then. But anyway, I'm excited to see it as it should be. You know, I want the Cyclops to be a one-eyed Greek guy. You know, I want it to be accurate as possible. So I think it's a big deal.
Okay, Dave?
Well, I agree. I definitely think it's a big deal. Now, when I first saw this, I said not a big deal at all, because before this, I had yet to see any kind of AI video which I liked at all. I mean, usually if you go on YouTube, there's plenty of them, the AI voice. It always, as soon as I realize it's AI, I just turn it off. But that trailer is the best AI thing I've seen yet. I mean, if he can do a full movie out of this, then what becomes of Hollywood then? I mean, the Odyssey cost $250 million to make. If he can do this for a fraction of the price, I mean, maybe Elon Musk, that Grok Imagine becomes his own movie studio, and he becomes the first, I don't know, what's after a trillionaire, a quadrillionaire or something like that? I don't know. So from that perspective, what the implications of what it does for Hollywood, if he can really do it based on that 3 minutes there, which I thought looked really great, then I think it's a big deal.
They should do it with all the classics, like just because those are the best scripts ever written, right? You just upload them all, and then hopefully you get something. But having the AI maintain the same character's face for 3 hours, I think that's pretty questionable.
I will also say, though, after Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, if you watch the videos where the actors are talking about, like Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, they're so excited talking about the practical effects, the animatronics, the lack of CGI, all of that, the locations that they were shooting at, and with the way it's dominating theaters, it's still sold out for like all of August, basically. There is a lot of that aspect where is the more traditional movie making coming back? Is there a revival? It's hard for IMAX. It's really hard to get those cameras. They had to create a bunch of things to deal with audio issues and stuff. It's very cool, the creative aspects. So we'll see if maybe that part bleeds in. Otherwise, yes, the other argument is AI movies entirely. There's also an AI actress. We'll talk about that next time. Speaking of movie, though, sci-fi movies warned us about this. Could robots taking over finally be becoming a reality? OpenAI says some of its most advanced AI models went rogue during testing and hacked a company. Now, according to the company, the AI agents were being tested in a controlled environment when they identified vulnerabilities and broke out of the test. The models then hacked the AI startup Hugging Face, gaining access to some of its internal systems. OpenAI called the incident unprecedented and says it is now investigating what happened while strengthening its safeguards. So AI can now operate on its own and commit cybercrimes. Big deal, no big deal, Dave?
Big deal. Now, it's so serious, and then we talk about Hugging Face as the name of this AI sharing hub or something like that. I mean, who don't harm Hugging Face? It's kind of crazy, but hopefully this is a big deal for everybody who watches the Terminator movies, 5 times over, like myself. I mean, years ago, like a computer becoming self-aware and doing things without permission, I mean, that was, like we said, it's like a movie punchline. Even though we're talking about it now, I still don't think it's getting its proper due. So I understand we have to win the AI race if China is involved. It doesn't look like that race really has a winner or even an end, but I think this is a very big deal.
All right, Chris?
No big deal. And no, the race doesn't have a winner. I think we all lose when it comes to like the
Somehow I
replacement
figured
of
you'd say
jobs
that,
and that
Chris.
sort of a thing. But to me, I see this as not a big deal. The only big aspect of it is these companies want the freedom to build these massive models that could displace jobs and do all these things. But when something goes wrong, they want the public to absorb all the negative things, and you just suffered. But part of this, it seems like it's marketing. Like they could just say, we ran a security test and it failed or something like that. But instead, our model is so powerful, it escaped the confines of the server room and invaded a startup somewhere called Hugging Face, and now they're Frowning Face. They want to really gin it up. They want you to like, oh my God, what are they doing? Because they're in competition. Remember Anthropic, they have Claude, and Claude, they had that last year, where they were doing security tests and they said that the AI broke free on Opus 4 and they needed to contain it, and it was threatening an engineer that it was going to expose his extramarital affair. And we covered this on Primetime. Yeah, I think it sounds good. It makes it sound like, oh, the company's tool is so powerful. But I don't know, I think it's a little editorialized. That's what I'll say.
To your point, there has been some reporting on this, especially on the Mythos one, and that, oh, well, they won't tell us what it is, they won't release it because obviously national security concerns, but if they won't show us what it was that fabricated? There is that argument. Midterms are coming up. Big topic is always affordability. So in that vein, Bloomberg reports that Apple is preparing to launch a new program called Apple Upgrade later this month. That's with backing from buy now, pay later company Klarna. So the program would allow customers to lease rather than buy Apple products. It's expected to include most major Apple devices, including iPhones, Macs, iPads, and Apple Watches. Now, this would mark one of the biggest changes to Apple's sales strategy in years. It also comes just weeks after the company raised prices on several flagship products. Dave, let's start with you. What do you make of this? A big deal or no big deal?
I'm going to say not a big deal. I mean, personally, if you have to lease or finance a new phone, you probably shouldn't be buying a new phone in the first place. I mean, you can like get a refurbished one for like a couple $100. It texts, it calls, it's got apps on it. I have a new iPhone, but I only got it free from Verizon. I got to say, it's exactly the same as my iPhone 8, except it has a better battery, it seems like to me. So I don't quite get why people wouldn't do that. I hope people use better judgment to this, because if you can't afford it, you should not be paying that much for it, according to me, all right?
All right, Chris.
I say big deal. So we disagree here, but I also think it's not a big deal that somebody leases a phone, because most people, they pay monthly for the plan and they pay monthly for the phone, and then they eventually pay the phone off. So I don't think that's so crazy. What I do think is crazy is the company that brought us taco debt and burrito debt and quesadilla debt and whatever Mexican dish you'd like, debt, when they partnered with DoorDash, is now trying to get into the Apple space. And I think that's annoying. And I don't like that they're, jacking up prices and then doing it. So basically, oh, it went up, but hey, guess what? I can pay it in 4 and it'll be a little bit more. I don't support it. I don't like it. It's not good. It's predatory.
All right, on that note, Chris and Dave, thanks for joining us. Coming up, though, the Vance family with another mouth to feed after Second Lady Usha Vance gave birth to a son Sunday. Luckily, the vice presidential chicken coop is open for business. We'll meet the guy who built it on the other side of the break.
It's all my fault.
All right, some good vibes now for the second family, with Usha Vance giving birth to the couple's 4th child Sunday. Feeding that lad could eventually be made easier if one of the kids can run out to the family's custom-made chicken coop right on the property of the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory and grab mom and dad some fresh eggs. The coop, designed to echo the Queen Anne style look of the Veep's crib, a custom coop creation by Carolina Coops. And joining me now with more, Matthew Du Bois, founder and president of Carolina Coops. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you. How amazing that you were able to design a chicken coop for the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory. I want to ask you more about that in just a minute. But first, tell us about your own journey. How did you become a chicken coop designer?
That's a question I get a lot. And honestly, the funny part is I didn't try. It actually just happened on accident and out of survival. We've been building coops for 20 years. And back in 2008, is when people started to fall on hard times, and long story short, started pulling materials out of a dumpster, building chicken coops, selling them on Craigslist, and here we are 20 years later selling coops to the world.
Now, the coop at Number One Observatory Circle is absolutely beautiful. How did that project come about?
It actually all came about just because a customer who is now a close friend of ours are friends with the Vances, and they caught wind that the Vances wanted a chicken coop set up at the vice president's residence. And they said, Matt, design a coop, wow them, and let's see where it goes. And there it is right there.
And tell us a bit more about that design process. What went into your considerations? Did the Vance family have any special requests?
They actually didn't. They really just trusted us throughout the entire process. Plus, their team was awesome to work with. But basically, in a nutshell, we did some quick research. We looked at the mansion there, and of course, you can't miss the turret with that conical roof up top. So I went to my chief designer. I said, "Listen, make them something awesome." And it's not only going to be for the Vances; it's for every second family coming up. And it just became a part of history, and it's just an absolutely gorgeous chicken coop.
It really is. And it's not just the vice president's family that's installed one of your coops, actually. Mike Tyson was also one of your customers. Tell us about that one.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, Mike is awesome. So a lot of people don't realize Mike is a huge animal lover. And what we built him was actually a pigeon coop. So it's still a custom structure meant to create a place of destination for our customers. In this case, for Mike, he just loves his pigeon. We actually had the luxury to be able to do a full documentary with him. And I wanted to show the world how much Mike loves his coops and what Carolina Coops can do to bring that place of sanctuary that really is what it became for Mike.
And public figures or not keeping backyard animals just seems to resonate with a lot of Americans. Why do you think that is?
It's interesting. My business started in 2008, and that was actually my first experience realizing fear with the economy and the country and all that. And but doing this now for 20 years, I've noticed when things get a little crazy out in the world, we start to do what I call nesting, to be honest with you, where we start to think about, instead of spending our money on traveling, going on vacation, we start to think about our backyard. And then, we came out into the world making these chicken coops. So it's very, very easy. And I want to say that we've helped be a part of making it so that it's become very popular, not just to have chicken coops, but to even have bunnies and turkeys and ducks. We just really reinvented what a backyard enclosure should be so that it's so easy for customers to have chickens no matter where they are.
And before I let you go, for folks watching at home who might want a chicken coop of their own, can they hire your team?
100%. This is what we do every single day. It's what we love to do.
All right. Well, Matthew Du Bois, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Tiffany Meier Tonight. I'm Tiffany Meier, and we'll see you tomorrow.